All right. In this video, we have Mike, the used book guy here, the master of the used books, master of the buy very low and sell very high for high ROI. Mike, how you doing today?
Pretty good. I appreciate you having me on the channel. I'm interested to speak to somebody like yourself who has a completely different business model than me, but it just goes to show that you don't have to do one certain thing to make money selling on Amazon or regardless of the platform, eBay. It's interesting to kind of see how we have the same kind of business sense and mindsets. We just have different business models, but we both make them work in our own respects.
Exactly. Like, I'm sure there's, like, I was about to say off camera, we were talking off camera. I was about to say, like, it's super easy to get in a mind state of like, ooh, Mike, the used book guy, I really like his business model. I'm going to do like 40% his business model and 60% my own. But I don't know, like, what do you think about like focusing on one thing versus like trying to like do multiple things like that? What's your take on that?
So a little bit of background. I do about $10,000 a month in sales on Amazon, and I spend 20 hours, most weeks probably less than 20 hours a week doing my business. So that includes sourcing and packing up and shipping to Amazon. When I first started this business, I was doing it well over 40 hours a week. But as your business grows, you redefine processes, you redefine how you're sourcing, and you can start to get some of your time back. So if I was the person that was focused on multiple different avenues, I probably never would have been able to get my business to $10,000 a month working only 20 hours a week, because I always would have had this other thing that kind of distracted me. And sure, do I leave money on the table sometimes by not walking around the thrift store? I just go in, I scan the media, and I leave. Probably every single time I leave money on the table. But the argument I make is, if I'm in and out in 30 minutes and you decide to look at the whole store for 2 hours, how many more opportunities, how many more items can I scan at other thrift stores to offset what I'm potentially losing at that one store?
Yeah, that's a great point. And just for clarity, for those who don't know, we were talking behind the scenes as well, that in the 10,000 in sales, it's around like 5K profit that you take home, pay yourself, put in your bank account.
Yep. So after fees, I didn't factor in software. I did a video on the YouTube channel not that long ago breaking down a full month of sales, and it was right around 10.4, and I basically made 5,400. I sold about 500 books or 500 books, CDs, DVDs. So my buy cost is right around $1. So after my buy cost, I basically bring home half of the money in sales that I sell through Amazon. So if I sell 10K, I can expect to put $5,000 actually into my bank account.
And we were talking about this off camera as well. We wanted to bring it onto the podcast. We were thinking, like, I don't know how to introduce this topic, but basically, like, it feels like sometimes resellers are just broke. Like, I don't know what it is about like the reselling space. Like, we were thinking, like, how many people who are reselling actually have 10K in their bank account that like is free and clear. They don't have to pay bills. I think there's a subset of resellers who have 9-to-5 jobs plus reselling. And I think they actually end up doing better off in this situation sometimes. But like, what do you think the reason for that is? Or do you even agree?
I agree wholeheartedly. I think there's many, many more broke resellers than resellers that actually have money. I think a part of it is anybody can resell. You don't need any kind of business degree, any kind of business background. You can start a reselling business today, and you have no idea how anything works. A lot of it, I guess, my success, maybe you have some kind of background, but I was a store manager at CVS for 10 years. So I'm looking at P&Ls. I know profitability of businesses. So when I jump into being an entrepreneur, I understand there's more than just, okay, I sold this item for $100. Well, how much did I actually make? How much did I actually spend on the item? And a lot of resellers, they almost do it for like fun money. I don't have nothing against fun money. If you're going to do reselling, to maybe you go on vacation once a year, you want to pay for it with reselling money. But for the majority of us that want to treat it like a business, you have to understand that it's more than just going to a thrift store. It's more than just listing an item. You have to understand your profitability. Where's the money going? Tracking your expenses. It's the same way with taxes every year. I file my own taxes. Every receipt I get, I upload myself into QuickBooks. There's a lot more that goes into it than just the fun part of sourcing. And that's where people get lost in the sauce. And that's where you don't become profitable, because you don't even know if you're profitable if you don't know how much you're spending versus how much is coming in.
And do you feel like, I'm trying to parse out, do you think the problem is that people aren't actually making a profit, or that they're just really bad with money in their personal lives?
I think people are really bad with money in their personal lives. And I used to be in complete debt. Like I literally, all my money would go to credit cards, car payments. And people kind of give me flack when I bring it up on the channel. Like I found Dave Ramsey many, many years ago, probably like 13 years ago. And I just started to get out of debt. And you start to see different changes when all your money isn't going out the door to a credit card or a car payment. Sure, you know, I totaled my car probably 6 months ago. I could have went and got a brand new car for $70,000 and leased it out, or, you know, got a car payment. Instead, I went, paid cash for an '08 Altima, $9,000. I don't have a car payment. Those types of decisions, I think you're right. It's like your personal money sense impacts your business money sense even more, because you just carry the same bad habits, right? It's not like I spend tons of money on my business, but none on myself. Usually they go hand in hand. You know, if you're real cheap in your personal life, you're going to be real cheap in your business life.
Yeah. And then also, I think there's a big hurdle at the start of reselling that a lot of people just never really get over the hump to where they're actually making more than what their bills are, or their bills are just like so high that like, okay, like if you have to make $9,000 a month in order to pay your bills with reselling, like out of your pocket, pay yourself $9,000. Like that's a lot of money to just, but some people are like, yeah, dude, I have to make $100K a year in order to like pay for anything. And it's like, when the bar's that high, it makes it kind of hard for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, and that comes down to everybody's situation is different, right? Your living expenses are completely different than mine. I live in the middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania. You know, I'll be able to get a house for well under 200K. That's pretty nice. If I lived in California, that doesn't exist. I can't even get a tiny home. So a lot of this is self-awareness and where you want to be as a reseller and what your goals are. You know, we all have different types of things going on in life, and starting out is tough reselling. And when you start out, you're excited the most. You want to go spend the most amount of money. Well, I'll tell you right now, you start on Amazon, you go buy that book. By the time it gets checked in, and by the time that money hits your bank account, you're looking at 6 to 12 weeks sometimes. That's just the reality of it. You're not going to get your money back as quick as you probably expect. You sell that item on Amazon, well, Amazon's going to hold that money until the return period clears, which is 4 weeks. So that money's just going to sit there. And a lot of people that start, unfortunately, kind of what you said, you run into cash flow problems really quick, and then you can get yourself into trouble when you start leveraging debt and you don't have proof of concept, basically, as a new reseller.
Yeah, I honestly don't think that you shouldn't be in like starting with debt until you like actually have sold some stuff and actually have been profitable with what you've actually done. Because you don't know what you don't know. And so like use like $500, $1,000 to like make some buys, see how they go, like analyze it once you've had them listed. Like, are they selling the way you thought they would? Are they selling slower than you thought? Did you list it for $40, but you sold it for $22? Like maybe figure that stuff out. Cause if you're leveraged, like, well, what can you do?
Yeah, well, and it's not even that hard to really track your numbers. So the idea of, well, tracking my numbers is too hard. No matter what platform you sell on, there's plenty of spreadsheets you can purchase. There's plenty of software that has a lot of the, you know, analytics built right in where you can see, okay, this month I made X amount of dollars. Like I have a spreadsheet for Amazon. I download one report, upload it into the spreadsheet. I see every breakdown of every fee, how much I made, average selling price, returns, all of this. You can't just fly blind anymore in reselling. Like maybe 4 years ago when reselling boomed and everybody was locked inside their houses, sure, you could just get away because everything was selling. But now it's kind of separated the pretenders from the contenders. Now that, you know, this is it, this is reselling. Some people think we're in a down market right now. Well, if you can make it now, then imagine what you possibly can do when it's an up market, you know?
So for your bookkeeping, what's kind of your setup for those who don't quite have a bookkeeping like setup yet?
I use QuickBooks, self-employed. So I file my taxes through QuickBooks every year. It's a part of it. I pay, I think it's like somewhere in the 30s. I think it's like $32 a month now. So all my receipts, I put them in a pile. I upload them once a week. These get thrown out because it saves a picture of your receipt. You categorize your receipt. If you don't know what categories are, you can YouTube it, different tax categories. So everything gets written off, whether I spend $1 at a thrift store or whether I'm spending X amount to be a part of a group. All of that's a write-off. At the end of the year, I file my taxes right through QuickBooks and TurboTax, pay my tax bill. As self-employed, you're rarely going to get a return unless you're overpaying your quarterly. So if you work a job, maybe you're used to getting a return every year. Here to tell you, self-employed, it's usually the opposite. Usually you're paying a pretty chunk of your profits to taxes every single year. But I'm no expert, right? All I do is take a photo. So I take a photo of the receipt and the app uploads everything. It's got the date, it's got the price. All I'm doing is putting materials and supplies for my business. It's kind of foolproof, but a lot of people feel maybe scared or intimidated by it. But it's actually a lot easier. We live in a world where if we wanted to, all these businesses could be completely automated. We're just taking a photo of something, dragging it somewhere, or a lot of people pay for accountants. Send all your receipts to an accountant. But for me, I do it all myself through QuickBooks. And like I said, I have a spreadsheet that I use for Amazon to see like what my profitability is, what my turn rate is, what my return rate is, things like that. Just a little bit more insight.
Yeah. And like also another option that you could do that works is you could just put all your expenses in a Google document and make sure to keep track of it for tax time. And then you could also use something like Inventory Lab that has a profit and loss, or something like Seller Board that has a profit and loss. It's not going to be 100% perfect, but it's going to be like good enough as well. But those are like, you got to pay, I think it's like $80 a month for Inventory Lab. So it's just, you got to decide whether that's good for you or not.
Yeah, I mean, there's something out there for everybody. I think a lot of us, resellers are cheap, right? We don't want to spend money on anything. I think about this all the time. Like we walk into a thrift store and if it costs more than $1, we're like, oh, this thrift store is greedy. But in reality, it takes money to make money. I know that sounds like kind of cheesy and lame, like something some rich person would say, oh, it takes money to make money. But in this business, you got to value your time. If you tell any reseller that's making a decent amount of money that you can give them 5 hours a week back, they'd probably be willing to say, okay, what's it going to cost me? Because your time is your most valuable thing. I don't want to resell 80 hours a week. That's not fun for me. I don't enjoy working 80 hours a week, even if it is reselling. So you got to be willing at some point in time in your business. And I was stubborn. First 4 years, I'd never had a listing software. So I listed everything through Amazon Seller Central. So
oh my gosh.
I would list. I remember the day that broke me, man. There was a specific day. I listed a box of 180 CDs. So through Seller Central, I get 6 pages of 30 up labels, 30 stickers per page. They're not in any order. So I got 180 CDs. I got 180 stickers, not in any type of order. It took me like 4 hours. And I finally said, okay, I'm getting a listing software. And I should have did it, probably 3 years prior to that. But I was a cheap reseller. I didn't want to spend the $24 to $70 on a listing software because I thought, well, that's an extra $24. Well, the time I was spending, forget about it. Like I should have did it years ago. It's crazy to me, but hindsight's 2020.
Yeah, it definitely is. I think for me that I actually remember that moment as well. And it was when I was doing books as well. I remember, I think I had sourced about 200 profitable books and I had timed how long it takes to list a book with Seller Central. Like at the time it was like 5 minutes a unit or something like that. And I'm like, well, like if Inventory Lab, I can do it even like 2 minutes a unit. That's going to save me 200 times 3 minutes. So 600 minutes. That's going to save me, is that 10 hours? 10 hours for me to use the free trial of Inventory Lab. Like, okay, like that's worth it to me.
I think it's a fine line we walk, right? Like if I tell somebody, I struggle with this all the time. Am I a full-time reseller if I only work 20 hours a week? Is it based off the hours you work or is it the money you make? Because my argument all the time is going to be it's the money you make, because how many people resell that spend over 40 hours a week that aren't making full-time income? Like that's the majority is probably really high. If we took a percent from 0 to 100, it's probably like, I'd probably say 80% of resellers that spend over 40 hours a week in their business aren't making a full-time income. And I know that might sound crazy, but I just understand, and I've seen a lot of people come and go in reselling. We enjoy wasting our time as resellers. And I don't feel any type of way telling somebody, I only do this 20 hours a week. Why would I do it more if I got my processes ironed down? But I do think there's like a stigma around it, like, oh, you're not even reselling full time now, you're only doing 20 hours a week. I'm like, I guess if you want to look at it that way.
Depends on what circle you're in. In the online arbitrage circle, I don't think that's a stigma. They're like, oh, like you've actually figured something out.
Yeah, well, in the thrifting world, it's like, if you're not at the Goodwill bins all day, every day, dude, you're a loser. You're not making no money. It's like, I got a Goodwill bins 10 minutes away. I went there once and I'll never go back. And like, people would kill to live within walking distance of a bins. And I'm like, I'm never going there. I have a business model that works. And it took years, right, to get, you know, from where me and you started in our respective business models. When we first started, sure, we were spending lots of time. We were figuring things out. You're not going to be able to start selling media today and do 10K a month in only 20 hours a week, right? That's not realistic. But as you develop your business, you refine your processes, you figure out your sources. Same thing with you, right? As you sell items, you've got replans, you know what brands sell well. That's when you can start to get your time back. And I think that should be everybody's goal, is to make as much money as they can in as little bit of time as they can.
And so going back to that question of like, what's full-time, is it the time or the money? Like, what would you say is full-time money if you were to like put it in that category?
Well,
like
you figure
3K a month, like.
I guess so, because 36K is probably like the median income. Like, I'm not sure what the median income is right now, but it's probably 3 to like 5K, give or take. And 5K is super low depending where you live, you know, depending what state you live in. $5,000 ain't going to pay the bills. You know, some people have rent $2,500, $3,000 a month. $5,000 isn't going to cut it. It's different for everybody. So I guess we fall between 3 and 5 is the full-time income we can run with.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess it's in my brain, it's kind of a combination of like, yeah, you make at least like 3-4K profit, but then also if you have a 9 to 5, but you're making like 5K a month, I still wouldn't call you a full-time. I don't know. What do you call someone who has a 9 to 5, but makes like 4 or 5K profit a month, a full-time reseller? That's a weird one.
Yeah. I mean, another thing that like we talk about like reselling to like your job is people don't realize you quit your job, right? There's no 401k match, right? Like when I quit CVS, I lose my 5% match in my retirement. Health insurance ain't cheap for self-employed, right? You probably had a better plan when you had a corporate job, or maybe it covered your family members, maybe you had kids or a significant other that the health insurance covered. There's a lot of other expenses that kind of get lost in the reselling realm. So, I mean, yeah, sure, your paycheck's got to be, you know, your 3 to 5K, and that's after all of your expenses. I guess that's important. Like, you're actually bringing that money home. It's not, you're not doing $3,000, but then you're paying $500 a month in health insurance and things like that that you would have if you had a normal job.
I see. Yeah, that makes sense. So kind of like digging into your business, like, so for the people who don't know, you sell used books. You're not going to the bins for them. You do a lot of thrift stores. Do you do estate sales, free pickups? Like what? Oh, we had this conversation a while ago that you don't like free pickups.
Free pickups, nothing in this world is free, right? What's the value of your time, right? Time, you got to put a value on the time. So my business, a lot of booksellers, right? They love library sales. The only library sales I do are the ones I help set up and I scan before they're open to the public. I don't go to my library sales around me ever. I don't have to. I have the thrifting route. So majority of my business is 90% thrift stores. I got different routes, driving 1 hour one way, you know, start for the store, make my way back 2 times a week, hit about 10 thrift stores a day, and send everything in 1 day a week. And there's a million different ways to make money as a reseller. You just have to figure out what works for you. This wouldn't work if I lived in the middle of nowhere. If you only got 3 thrift stores, dude, you're not going to be able to make any type of money in this type of business model. That's when you got to look at something like what you're doing, where you can source online. There's an infinite amount of items online that you can source. Thrifting is the hardest model I would argue. It's the easiest barrier to entry because you just go in the store and you look items up on the phone, or you scan items with a Bluetooth scanner, and it tells you, hey, you're going to make $10. Your business model, there's more software understanding, there's more learning that goes into it. And, each business has a benefit and negatives. Do you want to be in thrift stores all day, every day? I mean, I hate going in thrift stores. I see it as a business transaction. I go in, I scan the media, I leave. I don't want to be around, people. People don't have any common courtesy anymore. So I go in, get my stuff, and I'm out on to the next one.
Yeah, and you purposely group all of your sourcing into 2 days a week, correct?
Yep, 2 days. I used to be 4 days a week. I'll go to 3 stores 4 days a week. Well, why would I do that if I can just have 2 dedicated days? And I'm a firm believer if, I'm not sure if you have things in your business where you say, all right, well, I'm going to source from this time to this time. You're more focused. If I say Wednesday, I'm going to thrift stores, that's the only thing on my mind is thrift stores. I'm getting done. I'm more focused. I'm getting in and out of stores versus, well, I'll go to a thrift store tonight, see what's in there. Then you diddle that all around, hours pass. And I'm sure you have things in your business, right? Like, all right, I'm going to source from this time to this time.
Yeah, for me, recently, about a month ago, I started dealing with all of my bookkeeping, admin, repricing, dealing with returns, because unfortunately I'm not in a 2% return category like books. All of that upkeep planning type of stuff, I do that on one day. And then the rest of the time I just source or don't do anything. And that's really nice to just wake up in the morning and be like, yeah, this is my best time. I'm the most clear-headed. I can put my best into sourcing for 5 days a week.
Yeah, well, the problem is most people won't do that, and they'll drag out all those tasks over the 7 days. So you lose time. You're not as efficient and you're not as focused. So it's going to take you longer over 7 different days instead of you just sitting down for 2, 3, 4 hours, however long it takes, and knocking it out that one day. And then it's gone from your mind until you have to deal with it the next Monday and the next Monday after that. I think there's a lot to be said about, structuring and scheduling within your business, no matter what your model is, so you can be more focused. It's not just about getting time back. It's about being more efficient. How many more products can you source if you sit down and, I'm just sourcing today. I'm not messing around on social media. I'm not working on the YouTube channel. I'm just going to source. All of a sudden, your output goes right through the roof.
Yeah, it's literally, there's just so much that you can get back by just batching things together, a ton of focus that way. If you just sit there and you have 2 returns, you're just going to open the 2 returns, find them in the computer. It's going to take double the amount of time per unit than if you just sit down and process 20 returns or whatever else it is. It's just so much more efficient to just be efficient and just focus on one thing.
It all adds up. The seconds, the minutes you save will add up in ways you didn't even think was possible. And another thing I'm a huge proponent of is my shipments all get done on Saturday. So I source, everything sits until Saturday. The idea of, oh, I went sourcing today and I found 3 boxes I'm going to send to Amazon. And then you get home, well, I'm going to pack them up today. Well, I would argue that that's more inefficient than if you said everything gets packed on one day. You sit down, all right, all this is going out the door. Boom, 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 knock it out. Probably be half the amount of time as if you came home that night and decided to list it then.
Yeah, I used to do FBM from my home, and I was doing online arbitrage, the eBay to Amazon. And I had talked to another person in the similar business model, and he was, anytime he got boxes, inbound stuff, he would list it that day. And he argued from a cash flow perspective is better, which it probably is. It is cool to receive something let's say it's Tuesday, you receive it, you list it that day and it sells overnight. That is pretty cool. But the thing is opening 3, 4 boxes and listing that stuff and doing that every single day rather than just opening everything all at once, listing everything all at once, putting everything in the bins all at once. It's so much better the latter way. And then it's better to just have a prep center or some kind of system to take care of that.
I agree. I mean, cash flow as a reseller, when you first start, I can see the headaches of cash flow, the time it takes to get your money back. But overall, there's no other, business model in the world where we can go and 10x our money. You know, even in your situation, you know, where else can you take $1 and infinitely turn it into $5 or $10? It's literally a money hack once you have it figured out. As cheesy as it sounds, there's no other opportunity in the world, and people shy away from, you know, especially with thrifted models. Like, if I can't make 20 bucks, then I'm not buying it. Well, if you're walking down the street and someone said, I'll give you $2 for your dollar, you're going to take it every single time. But as resellers, we have this crazy mindset where we got to make the most amount of money all the time.
Yeah. And like, you do have to think about like, okay, like per unit of me listing it, how much time is that going to take for me? So like, obviously we wouldn't buy something for $1 to turn it into $2, making $1 profit if that action takes us 10 minutes, because that's $6 an hour.
Yeah.
But like, you should probably be taking, you should be taking your profit, especially when you're like at the very beginning. Like it is helpful to understand like, okay, per unit, per action, like how long does this take me overall? Because then you can be like, okay, like my goal is to make at the start, maybe your goal is to make $15 an hour. Then you can break down like, okay, like in order to make $15 an hour, my minimum profit needs to be $3 because it takes me X amount to do that action. I'm sure you have some profit criteria around your books. Like what's your criteria for stuff?
So we have data in front of us as Amazon sellers. So when we look at the data, we can basically tell whether or not, you know, how fast something is going to sell. If I go into a store and I scan a book, it costs me 50 cents. And I see the data that it sells every single day. And I can make $3, we'll say $3 just for the sake of this. So I spend 50 cents. I see the data that it sells every single day, and I can make $3. I'm buying that book and I'm sending it to Amazon. So basically, I'm going to make $2.50. But like you said, what's the effort that goes into that, right? Like, am I conditioning books? Am I cleaning books? Am I cleaning the book? Do I have different conditions? Do I have different condition piles? How am I packing these things? All I'm doing is putting a label on the back and flipping through the pages to make sure there's nothing inside. That's literally all it is. So the $2.50 might sound like junk. Why are you wasting time with $2.50? But if I told you all you're doing is fanning through a book, putting a sticker on it and throwing it in a box, you'd be like, all right, I'll do this infinitely. I'll sit here all day and do that infinitely, and you just pay me $2.50 for every single item.
So on Saturday, on average, how many books do you usually list?
So like how many boxes I send a week. So it varies, right? I also do CDs and DVDs. So books right now are probably about 20 to 30% of my business. The disc media is closer to 70. But on average, on a given week, I'm sending usually between 4 and we'll say 10 boxes on a high week from 2 days of sourcing. Now, boxes, as a box of books, I sent a box last week. It was only had like 30 books in it. So if you look at that, 300 at max if I have big coffee table books. But if it's a box of CDs, we talked about 180 CDs in a single box. So it kind of multiplies itself depending on what you're packing. So yeah, between 4 and 10 boxes a week for me. And that maintains me at my, 10K in sales. I have a little bit over 3,400 active inventory at Amazon right now. And I sell right between 500 and 600 items usually in a given month to kind of maintain those numbers. So you sell about 20%. Right now I'm around 18, which is fine by me. But realize if I have 3,400 items sitting there at $1 buy cost, I literally have $3,400 sitting at an Amazon warehouse, not making me money currently. So it does take time to scale this business. You're not going to get rich quick overnight doing this. You can make a lot of money in the long term, but just understand it's going to take time to get the results you expect to get.
So for you, let's say average amount of units per box is like 70 units.
Yeah,
maybe?
give or take. Yeah.
Give or take. And you send in like 6 boxes a week. So that's like 400 or 500 units.
Yep.
And that takes you like 6 hours, 5-6 hours.
Yeah, give or take. Depend if I'm being distracted by a podcast on YouTube or a video like that, because I do it all right here on my computer. So I usually always have something playing in the background. And I do get distracted when I'm listening. I could be more efficient, but yeah, we'll say between 4 and 6 hours to get those boxes done.
Yeah. So if it's like 100, 120 units an hour, that basically takes you like 30 seconds a unit. So it's like, if you even make $2.50 and you can do, gosh, I can't do math, but Wait, what? 30 seconds. Yeah, so 120. Yeah, that's like $300 an hour, right?
Yeah, I broke it down. It's funny. I had a YouTube comment this morning that asked me like, how much do I actually make per hour? So I ran the numbers on the video where I did 10K in sales, and I broke all the numbers down. And after my buy cost, I didn't factor in software cost to this, but it turned out to be $62.50 in profit per hour for that month of sales. So $62.
Everything with sourcing, with listing, repricing.
Yes.
All that stuff.
Yep. So it broke down to that minus my listing software cost and my repricing cost, which is all under $100 in total. So give or take, I'm perfectly fine. Listen, CVS is only paying me $22-23 an hour, right? So you're going to say, hey, Mike, you can make $50 an hour. I mean, I'd be stupid not to do that. And I think that's like, I don't think anybody's going to turn down a job where you can make that kind of money, like unless you're a neurosurgeon or somebody.
Yeah, I mean, like, how would you like making $60 an hour, like as a completely free bookseller, buy from thrift stores, sell on Amazon? Like, great, do that.
I mean, it takes work, right? I'm not sitting here trying to spin it like what me and you do is like easy. It took years of understanding how to do it, understanding what's available to you, refining your processes, you know, understanding the markets. And there's things I do that other resellers don't do. And you just develop that with time. You're not going to be a superstar when you first start, but you're going to make mistakes. You're going to learn from them. You're only going to get better today. Like the items we first bought when we first started, in most cases, like we look back at that stuff and we're like, what was I thinking buying this? Like I would never buy these types of items ever again. But that just comes with experience and time.
Yeah, my first attempt doing online arbitrage was when I was an eBay seller, and I had just recently thrifted it was like a Peruvian Express sweater, and I sold it for like $55. No, I think I sold it for like $70. But then when I sold it, I'm like, I definitely could have sold that for higher. So I tried to buy another one off eBay. I tried to send a low offer. I ended up purchasing one for like $50. And I had it listed for like $90 for like 6 months. Would not sell. I eventually sold it for like minus 25 profit. That was my first attempt at online arbitrage. So it doesn't get too much worse than that.
It's probably harder for you to not have winning products because you pay more for your stuff than, you know, somebody like me who's paying $1. Like, it's fine if I lose on an item. I'm into it for $1. Like, okay, big yep. All right, you're not going to have all winners. Not every piece of inventory is going to sell. And your business model, I guess it's more important to have the facts behind you, the sell-through data, the understand the information. So, you know, when you spend, you know, some of these items you're probably, I mean, what's the most expensive you paid for an item to flip?
Like 1 unit.
1 unit.
I think I paid $900 one time. Yeah.
There you go.
Got to be freaking right.
You got to be right. Like we can't buy 10 of those and be wrong, right? Like that's it. You're going away instantly. So that's the difference between the business models is the data and understanding the data and trusting the data and yourself to make these decisions is how you're going to be able to scale your business and make more money. You can't buy bad items, whether you're thrifting or whether you're doing, you know, eBay to Amazon, Amazon to Amazon. You have to understand what you're doing.
Speaking of that, though, in the last several years, I'm sure you've noticed it. Amazon has started penalizing like bad buys much more. Like, I don't know if you noticed, but like in like 2019, 2020, like you could just send stuff in. The removal fees were like 70 cents. But like now, like what are removal fees even? Like it depends on size. Depends on a lot of different stuff. Like it could be like $3 a unit potentially.
2022, I liquidated, I think it was around 1,400 items. And back then it was only $0.25 a piece. Now, minimum, you're looking at 90 cents a piece, and that's minimum. Like you're saying, it's based off size and weight. In a book, I'll probably tell you right now, you're probably going to pay about $2 a piece. So I went from paying $300 to liquidate 1,200 items to today, I'd be looking at, you know, $2,400. Like that's the difference. Amazon's kind of made us get smarter in the situations. And for me, it's just, you got to factor this in the business, right? Like, add it to your buy cost so you account for the items that aren't going to sell. Because in a thrifting model, there's a majority of your items that will never sell, right?
A majority? Not a majority.
Not a majority, but
there will be some.
Yeah, you're looking at probably 20%, give or take some, that just won't sell. It just, Amazon comes on the listing. There's a lot of other offers. And for me, I only give my item 6 months. From the time I send it to Amazon, it's got 6 months or it's liquidated. So somebody will buy it at liquidation for a quarter. I literally just break even, get back out of the item, maybe lose 50 cents, and I just reinvest the money. So I only give my item 6 months. A lot of booksellers will say I'm crazy. They'll let it sit in there for, you know, a year, 2 years, but the fees rack up, right? The long-term storage fees now start at 6 months. It costs more than it ever has, long-term storage. So you got to be smarter with this business. The days of just sending everything in and not understanding really what's going on, like when I first started, I think they're behind us. I think we got to be even smarter now as resellers to see success.
Yeah. And so how do you, like with all that in mind, how do you make buying choices? Like what risks do you like take versus like not take? Do you purposely not send in slower moving inventory, or do you look at the ratio between like how many sellers are on the listing, like compared to like how much velocity that listing has, or like how do you deal with that?
I've never ever taken into consideration how many offers are on a listing in my whole career. And I know that probably sounds absolutely asinine to especially people in your business model, right? There could be a million people selling that book. I don't even care, right? If I can get in at the lowest price, I'm cutting it loose. Now, I'll say this, right? What I say here is not, don't take my advice. My business is at a different place than a lot of people's business. Some people won't sell books over 1 million rank. Rank doesn't matter to me. I care about sell-through. So we have apps that show you how many days an item sold in the past 6 months. So some people, they want to see items that sell, you know, once a week. But for me, if I can get an item at 50 cents and the profits, you know, I might make $20, $30 and it sells once a month, I'm going to buy it and send it in.
Wonderful.
Every single time I'm going to buy it and send it in. Now, if you start out, that's not going to work because it's going to take months for it to sell. And I'm telling you, it's only got 6 months to sell in my case. So if I buy something that sells once every 6 months, which I have bought these items, I've sold plenty of them, but you got to make sure the profit's there, right? We're not going to buy that item that sells once every 6 months if it's going to make us $5-10. It's just, you're never going to make your money back at that point. But if there's a potential to make $50, well, we only got to win on one of those out of every 50 to at least break even. And you'll win on more of those if you have, you know, if you understand the data. So I'm not going to buy one of those items. Say, you know, there's 10 people on the listing. It sells once every 6 months, right? Like the odds of yours selling that one time it comes around, it's a lot less. But if there's no FBA offers and I can be the only, you know, used FBA offer and it sells once every 6 months, then I'm going to buy that every single time. And you would be amazed at some of the slow moving stuff I sell just because there's nobody else FBA. And it's stupid. And I know it's almost my secret sauce. Like if you're selling media and you're scanning, look at your phone. And if you see nobody in the used FBA column, you're probably going to buy that like 75% of the time. And I'm pretty sure the last video I did, I scanned everything I got from one thrift store. Only the accepts in my trigger set was about like 70%. So I literally bought 30% of items that scanned reject in the phone because the software has limitations. It doesn't alert you to those types of, you know, deficiencies in the market.
It honestly like makes me sick how uneducated and how like new and naive I was to Amazon when I was selling books, because like I was mostly just doing green accept, okay, I'm sending that in. Red reject, no. Oh, like every once in a while I would be like, oh, this is slow, but it's like $10 profit and it's showing reject. I think I'm gonna send it in. But like, man, like once, like I'm sure for you, like you've been selling on Amazon for so long. For me, I've been selling on Amazon so long, like there's so many rejects that we could have sent in, and there's so many greens that we probably didn't need to send in as well. It's just crazy. Like I low key am very tempted to just like go try books again, and just be like, you know, like I'm not scared to sell items as new, especially, well, I wouldn't sell textbooks as new, I don't think, but like doing eBay to Amazon and selling everything new. like looking at a Keepa graph, it's very obvious at this point to understand, like, does the brand or anybody care about my new offer? Like, obviously, yes, obviously, no. And like looking at a Keepa, like, okay, there's obviously no sales and no high sale. There's a high sales rank because nobody's been in stock for like a year. Like, that's why. So listed at $30, it's going to sell.
Instantly, dude. I've sent in items that had 0 sales score and that hasn't sold in 6 months on Amazon. You price it right, it sells within the week of it getting checked in. But that's the difference, right? So you go back to do that, you're willing to look at the phone while you scan. I've come across plenty of scanners in my time. They got their earbud in, they have no idea what their phone is.
I did that too. Yeah.
It's crazy to me how much money we can leave on the table. And that would be the huge difference. That's the only reason I can do the sales I do and the time I do it, right? Because I'm finding almost 30% more items than I otherwise would if I just had my, my earbud in. And a lot of it is understanding the data. Maybe the only reason it hasn't sold is because Bozo the Clown's got it priced at $150. Well, nobody's going to pay $150 for that crusty book you're going to send in. But you price it at $20, $30 and you're okay with making your $10, $15 profit. All of a sudden, you just came on the money that nobody else out there would have. That's why I would never even worry about competition. Like, if scanners moved into my area, if you have the knowledge, who cares? Who cares about competition? They're going to leave so much money behind. I always scan behind people. Whenever I see scanners, I'm like, I can't wait to see how much this person left behind for me.
Yeah. And obviously like that. It's nice to have no competition, but at the same time, like, people like always freak out like, oh, Goodwill's in the business of selling books. And like, I get that, like, they're scanning it and they are taking stuff out, but like a lot falls through the cracks in all categories. Like they have like a minimum wage person who doesn't care about their job, like looking these items up. Like,
and at the end of the day, if you rely solely on the Goodwill, your days are numbered one way or another, right? Like, they control your buy costs. They control how often you can scan new inventory. Why aren't we thinking outside the box besides a thrift store, right? That's like, online arbitrage people, if they only shopped on one website, right? Like, your business is literally tied to what that other business decides to do. Like, get out of the thrift stores. Thrift stores aren't fun. Like, don't rely on them. They can close whenever they want. Look at the prices in thrift stores. Everybody complains about them out there. They're only going up. So if you don't gotta, start building relationships. Get with libraries. Get with estate sale companies, clean out companies. There's so much opportunity besides thrift stores, but that's all you see on YouTube, and that's like the lowest hanging fruit. Like, go upstream. Get it before the guy takes his whole collection to the Goodwill. Why don't you get it from his house for him instead of him having to take it to the Goodwill?
I have to poke you on that though, because you said that you do mostly thrift stores.
Yeah, but I'm talking like one chain. Like, if it's just Goodwill, like, or if it's just Savers.
Goodwill kind of sucks. It's like the easiest way to thrift. Like, it's the low barrier. Like, there's thousands of Goodwills everywhere. Like, anyone who has done no prep, lives anywhere, hasn't driven anywhere, can go to a thrift store, like a Goodwill, like within 10 minutes of them in most cases, unless you live out in the sticks.
Yeah.
Like, it's the easiest place. Like, I know for me, like, I found really, really good stuff, especially at the kind of the no-name small mom and pop thrift stores. Those are great. Even if it's a chain thrift store, but it's just like kind of a more regional type one, those sometimes do better. And then, like, goodness, nobody goes to estate sales. Like, I tell so many people, go to estate sales. People will not go to estate sales, I swear. Like, I tell them the site to go on. I tell them that you need to look at the pictures and just look for a ton of books, or look for the types of items they're looking for. Like, it's ridiculous. It's such easy money, but people won't do it.
You got to think outside the box in this game. If your supply isn't coming from online, you need to be in the back room. You need to have relationships across the board. I know people, they have backroom access to Dollar Trees, Goodwills, Salvation Armies, Savers, any place somebody can think of. Somebody I know in my small group of around 200 people have access behind the scenes. So not only is a thrift store the last stop for items before the landfill, somebody's touching that stuff and looking it up before it even gets to the sales floor at the thrift store. You're at such a disadvantage, even though, like you said, there's one in every town. if that's your sole, reliability, you're kind of screwed. I would sit here and tell myself, like, I'm at the hands of the thrift stores. If my thrift stores go away, or if I only had Goodwills, dude, I'm not going to be able to get anything from my Goodwills around me. I go to them maybe once a month, and they usually suck. I maybe get between 10 and 30 items out of a Goodwill. It used to be I leave with a cart full every single one. So if I had to rely solely on Goodwill, my business don't exist 100%. I'd have to be doing something else.
And speaking of that, you've been building your social media for a long time. You have, what is it, like 5K on YouTube now? 6K on YouTube? Or how much? How much is that?
I don't know. I think I'm around 6,452 exactly channel subscribers.
All right, I undershot you there. My bad. But you've been growing a ton. It also seems like you have a group for other booksellers. Is it for booksellers specifically, or is it for like thrifters? Like, what exactly is the group that you have?
It's mainly for media sellers. We do have a few people that do like wholesale. We got a guy that does tools, but it's mainly for media sellers. So basically, we just have a weekly Zoom call, and we got a Discord. It's just all people that are just making money selling media. So all walks of life. If you can imagine the person selling media making, 50K in sales a year, it's probably over in the group. Retired people, young people, people with multiple kids, full-time jobs. The opportunity is there. And I do think it's important. I think it's probably more important almost in the realm you're in, is having the community around you of like-minded people. And I know a lot of you guys kind of have an inner circle where you guys come on a deal on a website or maybe even an item, and you're willing to share that information. It's kind of that, but just more in like a business side of things, because the odds of you finding the same, cat book as me is like slim to none. But maybe there's a certain brand the cat book is for you to be on the lookout. So it is important, I think, to be in a community that's uplifting, because there's a lot of negativity in reselling. It's easier for me and you to sit here and whine about how Amazon sucks than it is to be like, hey, do this to build your business. So I do think there is value to being in a group of like-minded people and having almost an inner circle of somewhere you can go to ask questions. And that's the benefit of it, right? Like, if anybody out there watching this wanted to learn like what you do, like, all they got to do is shoot you a DM. Like, you're an open book, right? Like, we have so much knowledge out there now in the reselling world compared to when we first started, but people still refuse to kind of take advantage of it. And a lot of us are willing to. I hold nothing back. Like, there's no secrets that I don't put out there. I literally put every single thing I do in my business, it's out there publicly. So why not take advantage of people like yourself and like me, who will just be like, here's exactly what I did. Here's some of the mistakes I made. And maybe you can avoid making the same mistakes I made when I was, just starting this business.
Yeah. And like, here's a story to like think about, like why it's so important to be in some kind of community, whether it's in the Discord group that you have, or whether it's with other friends that you're making you make a social media and you're connected with other people, or in some kind of way. Like, I was selling books back in 2020, and I had around 2,500 books active. And like, my goal, I was going to make 80K in profit that year. I was going to have 5,000 active inventory. I was well on the way to do that. That was kind of like the first time I had made like any kind of money at all. But then restock limits happened, and I really had no clue what to do. And at that point, I didn't have social media. I wasn't really connected in any kind of group. I was a very competitive bookseller, kind of like a little scarcity mindset of the type of bookseller. Because you guys know, like, if you're a bookseller, you probably know, like, you probably have had the feeling of like, there's only so many profitable books in this thrift store or this estate sale. Like, I have to get them before my competition, that guy over there who's scanning or coming into the house right after me. So I very much so felt that way. I wasn't connected in community, and I kind of had no clue what to do. I eventually like figured out what I was going to do based on like watching YouTube videos, which is good that I was doing that. But I probably would have cut down 2, 3, 4 months of deliberating if I was literally just in a group of people who are doing a similar business model to me. Because I assure you, if some big update like that happens, and Amazon, the biggest downfall of Amazon is your lack of control. because they are a little bit nuts sometimes, and they just kind of change things on a whim. Like, we have to work with them because of the marketing. Like, they have the marketing down. So if we have the products, we can sell them on their platform. But like, if you're in a group like that, I'm sure they had like the smartest minds thinking about what they're going to do about that update. And I assure you it'll be the same in the future when the next update happens, whether it's in 2 weeks or whether it's in 7 months. Like, I'm sure people are talking about updates like that as they happen, and people kind of come to a solution within a couple weeks rather than several months. Kind of like if you've ever played video games and the new boss comes out and people think it's impossible. Like, if you and like one friend are trying to figure out the new beta for the boss, like, I think you're going to be very far behind the people who have 100 people who are trying to figure out how to do that. They're the ones getting the new drops and selling them for billions, instead of you and your friend who haven't even gotten a kill yet.
Yeah, it's a lot of it, especially in the Amazon universe, because Amazon likes to do like these sweeping changes, like the Informed Consumers Act, and like, oh my God, account at risk of being deactivated. Well, if you're not in some kind of group where there's people dealing with the same thing, right? Like, you just drop the message right away. Like, yeah, this is nothing to worry about. You just re-verify your information. You're good to go. But if you're not in that group, you think you're going to get suspended. You think this is the end of your Amazon journey. And there's so many things that happen like that with Amazon, like with brands. Like, oh my God, nobody can sell Nike now. And everybody's Googling, why can't I sell Nike? But if you're in a group with people that have been around, have the experience, they'll be like, hey, relax. They're probably just doing this to get some of the shady sellers off the brand. And then they'll come back and they'll reopen it to people that have the legitimate invoices again. But if you don't have that, you think the sky is falling and this is the end of your business.
Cool. Well, Mike, thank you for coming on. Where can people find you?
Over on the YouTube, Use Book Guy on the YouTube. And like you said, I'm on all social medias now. I post, short content every single day. I am active on all of them. So if you have a question, concern, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm an open book. All my numbers are out there. All my business tactics, practices, everything's out there. And I do think, regardless of what your business model is, reselling, regardless of the platform, I do think there's still a lot of money to be made. And I think there's still a lot of innovation that hasn't even happened yet. A lot of outside the box thinking, softwares that we have no idea what's capable in the future. So don't feel like the ship has sailed. I think, the grass is still very greener for a long time here in reselling. And if it's something that's on your mind, don't be afraid to jump head first and kind of understand the business and, change your life financially.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on. Have a good day, guys. Take care. Bye.